Thursday, May 21st, 2026, Fort Wayne Public Transportation Corporation Board of Directors meeting. Let the record show that all members are present with the exception of Conrad Erberg and Representative Kyle Miller. The second item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. We do have a proposed change to the agenda, and it is under new business. And we'd like to switch D and C. So we'll be doing D before C. And when I get there, somebody is going to remind me of that so I don't forget. All right. So that with that change, are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay. Happy to accept the motion.
Move for approval. Second.
Okay. Motion by Nelson, a second by Jesse. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Signal after saying aye. Aye. Okay. Anyone opposed? Same sign. Okay. Motion passes. Next up is reading, correcting, and approval of minutes from previous meetings. We have the regular board meeting minutes from April 16th. We have External Stakeholder Relations Committee from April 30th and Performance Oversight and Monitoring Committee from May 11th. Anybody have any changes or corrections to those minutes?
For approval.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Nelson, a second by Ronald Booker. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Next on the agenda are the board committee reports. We have Executive Governance Committee, which did not meet. Next meeting is in June. External Stakeholder Relations Committee.
Yes, we met on the 30th of April and went over legislative updates, lobbying efforts, but mainly focused on the relationship with the coalition, who should be our basically designee to report on that, to be on that board, because they were gracious and offered us a position. And sorry, you were sitting there a second ago, so obviously believe that you should be doing that role. And then lastly, talked about the nature of just performance criteria that we'd like associated to the next round of this kind of past program, and they were going to come back and give us more information about how to handle that. So it's in a nutshell what we're doing. And some fundraising efforts, but still things to nail down.
Thanks, Jesse. Any questions for Jesse? All right, thanks. Next up is the Performance Oversight and Monitoring Committee.
Committee met in May 11th and minutes included in the packet.
Thank you. Planning and Development Committee. We did meet this week. Was that yesterday or the day before yesterday?
Tuesday.
It was Tuesday, yes. And we did talk a little bit about amendments to the budget that we're going to talk about tonight. And then we also discussed a little bit about on-time performance. And I know there was another agenda item, and I didn't bring my notes. The audit, yes, the audit. That's exciting. Yes, those three things. And so the minutes will be in your packet next month. Any questions? Okay, great. Transit Planning Committee.
That committee did not meet this month. Our next meeting is June 8th. We'll have a report next time.
Okay, next is the general manager CEO report.
Well, hi, everybody. Good evening. I just can't believe that the year is rolling along as fast as it is. Here we are in May already. A number of items to report tonight in addition to what's written in my report. First, I want to introduce Melissa Shaw, who is our Chief Impact Officer. She's on board this month and has met most board members in the committee already. So if you haven't had a chance, I hope after the meeting you'll get a chance to shake her hand and welcome on board. She tells me she's drinking from the fire hose, of course, and so we're very excited to have you on board, Melissa. Welcome.
Wonderful, thank you.
I think I reported last month after returning from Washington, D.C. that U.S. Congress was likely going to wait until after the midterm elections to release a transportation authorization. By surprise, this week, the U.S. House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee released a draft of its surface transportation bill. So our whole industry is unraveling that and reading it. I have to tell you, I have looked through the entire bill. It's more than 1,000 pages in length. But I have just a couple of insights to share. Overall, I think it's good news to see Congress taking action on transportation, even ahead of the midterms, so we can start to see how it's shaping up. The proposed authorization is called the Build America 250 Act. And BUILD is in all caps, which means it's an acronym. And it stands for Building Unrivaled Infrastructure and Long-Term Development for America's 250th. There are some concerns. Funding levels are unclear. Our National Association, APTA, continues to advocate for $138 billion for public transit and $130 billion for passenger rail. I've read the bill, and in part, because I'm not used to reading an amended bill, which has all the amendments, it's still unclear to me where those dollars fall. So I'm going to rely on others to give us clarity on what this looks like from a funding perspective. There are some changes that do rise that concern me. It appears to reduce the federal contribution for bus procurements from 80% to 25% federal share. Don't know why that they're considering that, but certainly our industry will push back on that. It establishes a consolidated state block grant program, which I think could affect Citilink's status as a direct recipient of federal funding. In other words, I think that the federal government is looking to pass the administrative burden to states while managing direct oversight only of very large transit agencies with in cities of 3.5 million or more. So that's one takeaway that I have, is that there would be a lot to learn about what that means. There are some new policy initiatives, some of which we advocated for. I'm excited to be able to connect the dots with being on the Hill and having conversations in rooms that then you see reflected in the bill. So for example, it streamlines environmental red tape for transit projects, including allowing bus shelters to be built in the public right-of-way without any environmental work, which is fantastic. That was one of my talking points. Further, it eliminates the vehicle spare ratio requirement. So the Fed set an upper end limit. Transit agencies can only have 20% more vehicles in the fleet than we operate in our peak service. And that's been a limiting factor for innovation because it doesn't allow us to really explore alternative vehicle types. But now that's been eliminated. It enacts a new federal vehicle registration for electric and hybrid cars to offset fuel tax revenue losses. There's a big focus on crime prevention and fare evasion. And then a focus on enhancing workforce safety, which I think is a positive in the bill. So we'll be unpacking that, of course, as an industry. We'll be getting lots of briefs, I'm sure, on what all of this means and how it's and how we're going to be working with or alongside of our federal partners to help them understand the impacts. So more will be revealed. I want to update you a little bit on the USP project, which is on the agenda tonight. This is the underground fuel storage tank project. When we get to that point, I'm going to ask the board to table that until next month, and we can talk about that when we get to that point on the agenda. Happy to announce that several projects are converging with improvements to the customer experience. Starting June 1st, tap to pay will be available on our buses, so riders will be able to board and pay their fare utilizing a credit or debit card, Apple Pay or Google Pay. Very excited to see that happening. We're, I think, as far as I've been told, one of the first transit agencies in the nation to implement token transit's solution for that. So I just want to caution us to know that since we're on that leading edge, let's be prepared. There might be some hiccups, okay? But it's still a very exciting opportunity for our riders. The newly configured 21 Medlink will begin service on June 1st. And then Transit app's Royale experience is now available in the app. So this allows riders to plan trips and see bus locations across the entire service area, not just tied to their geographic location. And so if you have a chance to download and use the Transit app, it's just called Transit, you can start exploring how riders will see an improved experience. I've used it a few times and I love it because you can see, where a bus is literally on the map moving toward you. And you can click on the bus and learn, that there are seats available, for example. Just a couple of other items to report. I want to congratulate Pam Schieber, our Chief Operations Officer. Today, she graduated from the League's Inclusion Institute after 9 months of going through that leadership development program. I'm happy to see Max back with us. He's just returned from Salt Lake City, where he was at the APTA Mobility Conference. And Matt has completed the APTA Emerging Leaders Program. This is a year-long leadership development program in our industry. And so I'm going to ask Matt to share some more experiences about that next month. I won't put that on you today, but I know you just got that. But in addition to completing the Emerging Leaders Program, Matt was elected by his cohort to be a mentor for next year's Emerging Leadership class.
Good job.
So, good job. Exciting things ahead to hear from Matt about his experience. And then finally, I have this in my written report, but I just want to acknowledge we are losing 2 drivers this month who are celebrating their retirement. Gina Hindle Clark has been driving for Citilink since 1999. 27 years of service. She was recognized at our Transit Equity Day event this year as having 8 continuous years of safe driving with, accident-free driving. So we're going to miss Gina and wish her well. And then the best dressed Citilink driver of everyone, Chris Phillips, who is really truly known as being the best dressed. He's always neatly pressed. He retired last week after 19 years of service. So congratulations to both, and we hope they won't be strangers. That's my report, and this is our questions.
Any questions for John? All right, thanks for that, John. Next is the CFO Controller's report. Did I miss something?
Well, the audit presentation is first, but.
Oh, first on the under 6.
Yes.
You're right. It is. A is the financial and single audit presentations.
Yeah, I will just pass it off to my.
Well, thank you for the warm introduction. No, good evening, everyone, and appreciate you having me back here this evening. Sharice mentioned we did meet with the Performance Oversight Monitoring Committee shortly ago. Did go through the deliverables in a little bit more depth than what I typically cover here at the board meeting. What I thought I would cover here for the next couple of minutes is really just a high-level overview of the audit results. First and foremost, as a reminder, you have engaged us to perform the service of an audit of your financial statements. And what our role is in that process is really to issue opinions on your financial statements as well as your compliance with federal funds. We have completed the audit process. The drafts that are available, I think Dr. Felicia has a roughly half dozen or dozen copies. If you'd like one, please feel free to review them. We've completed the audit process and we are prepared to issue these as final once we receive sign off by the State Board of Accounts. And that is a required process that's done annually in that we submit these to the State Board, they review them, offer commentary, typically very minimal, if any, and then we can move forward with finalization. So audit process is in really great shape. I do want to take a moment to thank Latasha and her team for their continued assistance through the audit this year. We do appreciate everybody that's involved in the process. So what I'll cover here for the next couple of minutes is I'll touch on the financial statements and really specifically just our opinions. Again, we went through this in a little bit more depth with the committee. We issued 3 opinions, as I mentioned. The first opinion is on the financial statements themselves, and we will issue what is called an unmodified opinion on those financial statements. That is the highest level of assurance we can provide and what you want and look for in an audit process. In addition to that opinion, we issued 2 opinions on your federal funds. One of those opinions relates to the internal control over financial reporting, and the second opinion is around your internal controls over compliance. As a result of the compliance engagement, we had no findings, we had no audit adjustments recorded through the audit process, and no other matters to communicate. So both of those opinions are also what we call clean opinions. So you have 3 clean opinions in the audited financial statements. You have historically had clean opinions as well, so very similar presentation and information as prior years. Also for 2025, there were no new audit standards adopted. The organization has gone through a flux of them the last probably 5-7 years with the lease standard, leasing arrangements, around information technology agreements, and some other components. No new standards this year, so appreciate that break from the GASB world because 2026 and on, there's a couple of new ones that are coming down that we'll talk to Latasha and John about. Otherwise, pretty consistent information as prior years, and the numbers that are in those are pretty close or similar to what you had previously talked about, with the exception of potentially some adjustments around GASB 6875 or the pension plans. That's the main deliverable that we issue. That's what you share with most constituents or users of the financial statements. We also issue a second communication, which is much smaller, which is the document that's provided to those charged with governance, about 4 or 5 pages. I'll touch on just a couple of items here as it relates to communication with the group here this evening. On the first page of this document, we highlight our responsibilities and the organization's responsibilities. As I mentioned, we issue opinions on your financial statements. Everything else within this document does belong to management and the organization. Latasha does reconcile financial statements back to internal records, et cetera. That's just a reminder that you've engaged us to opine on these, and that's all that we've done in that deliverable. Secondly, near the bottom of this first page here, as it relates to independence. We are required to be independent of the organization, and for any services that we provide, we do evaluate our independence as it relates to any of the services. For the last couple of years, you've solely engaged us to perform an audit of your financial statements, so there's really not much assessment that occurs outside of that process. So other items that I think are helpful to communicate or to share with you, I'll be on page 3 if you're following. Significant policies are again described in note 1 to the financial statements. No new standards or other matters to communicate to those charged with governance. There were no unusual policies or methods or alternative accounting treatments that are being used by the organization. So the processes you follow are what we would expect in the audit process. Management judgments and accounting estimates. A couple of limited areas in your financial statements that we can't point to a number as of year end and say that number is exactly correct. Management goes through a process to evaluate what they believe those estimates should be. For the organization, the 2 primary estimates in your financial statements are liabilities related to any litigation or other types of insurance claims. And the second one would be the actuarial assumptions used with the defined benefit and OPEB plans. We do challenge management's estimation processes, develop our own estimates, and believe that what management's recorded is materially correct and in line with our expectations. On the following page 4, disclosures in the financial statements. Again, as I mentioned, consistent with prior years, but we would at least encourage you to review these footnotes should you ignore all others, because they do contain relevant information to how the financial statements are pulled together. As I mentioned in the middle section of page 4, proposed and recorded and uncorrected misstatements, there were no audit adjustments that we proposed. So the financial statements that we received for management are those that ultimately ended up in the audited financial statements. And again, that's just a good testimony to the work that's being done internally around reconciliations and other financial reporting processes. And then lastly, on page 5, there are 2 new standards that we've communicated that are coming down the next couple of years. GASB's 103, 104. 103 is around financial reporting, and there'll be some changes to how your financials are presented moving forward. And we'll work with management on what those impacts may mean. But otherwise, audit process, clean process, good process, and we appreciate the relationship in serving Citilink. With that, I'll maybe pause for any questions or commentary from management or the board. Please.
What does GASB stand for?
GASB, Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
Okay.
So all of the accounting and auditing standards that the organization follows as a governmental entity are set by what we just call the GASB.
Okay.
There's a similar one for non-governmental entities that's called FASB. I don't care about that, but so that board is what sets all of the standards that we follow.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on the audited financial statements? Should you go home and read these in depth over a cup of coffee and decide you have questions, John, Natasha can get you a hold of me. Be happy to meet with you over coffee or a phone call and answer any additional questions. But otherwise, I'll turn it over to Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yes, I just saw that, like, you're up there. So we do need to accept the audit report. And that would be both this management and then the independent, this report here. And so we're accepting the draft, right? Okay. So if there are any questions or other points of discussion, I'd be happy to accept the motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Nelson, second by Motley. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, now,
It's my turn.
now it's your turn.
I do want to thank Michael and his team for their great work this year. We appreciate working with us again. So,
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
steps out for
Thank you
them.
all.
Okay. So we're moving on to 2026, April 2026 financials. And we're about a third of the year in, and we are still operating within the budget. And our net earnings are positive before unbudgeted items. Our total expenses were 6.1 million, which is a little less than 500 than the budget of 6.6 million. So we were about 7% lower than the budget. And we are still experiencing cost savings in the wages, the fringes, the fuel, and lower vehicle repairs. And we do have the budget amendment later, but so we'll be interested to see how that maybe changes the narrative a little bit with what we're saving in with the original budget. But we are still experiencing those savings. We also did have a little bit of savings in maintenance contracts and legal services year to date. Obviously, those cost savings were offset by our access contract, because that was not budgeted in the original. And so you do see that offset there. As far as comparing it to the prior year, we were lower as far as operating expenses from the last year, and that's due to lower wages, fringes, materials and supplies, offset by the access and then higher insurance costs. As far as revenues go, we were at 6.6 million, which was just short of the budget, about 3.5%. And that was due to lower overall operating and capital expenses. We did not have to draw down as many federal funds and use other resources. So we were short of the budget there. Our overall revenues are higher than the prior year, and that is due to the lease revenue from the access contract, and just overall expenses are a little higher, and that's mostly due to higher capital spending. We weren't spending much at all last year in capital. As far as our operating revenue, that again, that is higher because of the lease income, but that is offset by a little bit of a lower ridership that was included in the CEO report. As I said, we are higher on capital, the local spending for capital projects. That was about almost at 500,000 for the year to date. And our cash position was 3 million so far. If there are any questions, we'll take them on the April financials. If not, we do have the record of transmittals that will need to be approved in the interim financial, or record of transmittals, excuse me. Oh, sure.
The American Express, is that something that like different people have access to a card? Is it one account with multiple cards?
Right now, it's just 2 cards. And the majority of the staff just use one that's kept at the office locked up. And they just get in and use it for their needs.
I was just wondering, just because of the various types of like fake popcorn supplies.
Yeah.
Saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So all the departments use it.
Any other questions about the record of transmittals? Okay, well, I'm happy to. Motion. Yes. So the record of transmittals for the month of April and for May 1st through May 22nd, 2026.
I move that we accept the record of transmittals from May 1st, 2026 to May 22nd, 2026.
And April.
And April.
Great.
Oh.
You can write that in too.
I second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Raleigh and a second by Nina. Any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes, thank you. And now, next up, we have a budget amendment.
Yes, we do. It seems like this has been a long time coming. So hopefully you all have a copy of this. This is basically what I want. There wasn't an original budget, the original board packet, because it was discussed Tuesday at the committee. So we waited to put it in to make sure it was what the committee wanted to recommend to this board. So, as you many of you know, we've been saying we're going to have a budget amendment for the Tidewater access contract, because when we did the original budget, we did not have it included because the contract was not signed. And so now that it has been signed, we're basically trying to do with this amendment is just reflect basically where we think now those budget categories are going to be shifted. As you can imagine, because we did terminate or lay off various employees, there will be decreases in salaries and fringes and the materials that were involved. But we also have a little bit of other things. But just to give you the overall is that there is no change in the overall budget. The budget stays exactly the same. So we did not shift it upward. We did not shift it downward. It is an even change from that impact of the access contract, and we also included, like I said, some other current trends that were happening with our budget items. We did hear back from the city just today, shortly before the meeting, and so when it goes to the city board, it will be more summarized than this. If they wanted, they said we can do it by category, and that the categories they're talking about is the categories that they have in their system, which some of these line items will be collapsed into. So it will be at a little higher of a level, but every increase or decrease will need to be reflected by those categories. So I did want to share that with you. That was a question that came up in the committee. So we'll just highlight the changes that's going on here. As we said, we did have a decrease in staffing, and so you see the salaries and the fringes. That's about a 2.2 million decrease there. Primarily from that, and we also tried to incorporate what actually happened with our CBA contract, with the bargaining contract that happened, that was finalized after the budget went to the city. We also wanted to incorporate the health insurance renewal, the final health insurance renewal, so that's reflected in those changes as well. When it comes to materials and supplies and services, we tried to estimate what would be a decrease for, based off the contract. Material supplies, mostly that's fuel. There was also some other current trends that was happening with materials and supplies. And then for services, we were expecting some of those services to be a little less, like data processing or legal, because we don't have a full negotiation this year, and less employees, less things to litigate or determine. As far as insurance, we are expecting to have less claims because we don't have minibuses to actually repair the accidents, that even though we do have to carry some level of insurance for them, we are still expecting that level of damage to go down that we would have to have expense for. Taxes, that is just mostly gasoline tax. So the gasoline are for the minibuses. They purchase the fuel for the buses now, we do not. So that's a decrease there. In regards to purchase transportation, that's where you see the large increase, almost $3 million, and that is due to the contract that we signed and what we expect there. We do have an offset with the van pool since it did not start, so that's a little bit of offset to the $3 million for the outsourcing. When it comes to miscellaneous expenses and vehicle tracking, those are just a very slight decrease there. Also, just considering the contract. And then lease and rentals, that includes, I believe you all have heard that we did shut down our underground storage tank, and so we're leasing temporary tanks, and that's just reflecting that change there. On the revenue side, The biggest change there is just the lease income that we were discussing when we go over the monthly financials, and you'll see that in the other operating revenue. We did change that from the committee. If the committee members are noticing that, just to be consistent with the audit report, and you'll see a increase of over 600,000 there. And then the other changes for revenue are just the current trends that we're seeing when it comes to our revenue, when it comes to passenger fares and the contract and our federal funding. So with that, I'll end there as far as what the budget amendment is about. I did want to note though that although the budget is even, it didn't change, it didn't go up or down, there is a decreased use of our operating reserves. In the original budget, we were going to be using some of our operating reserves. In this budget, we will not be expecting to use any of our operating reserves. So I did want to reflect that. And I'll take any questions if you have any.
What expenses are included in the miscellaneous expenses? What?
That's things like CDL, drug testing, it could be bank fees, our token transit fees, recruiting costs. We don't really have any recruiting costs this year, but if there was some, that would be in there. Just various items that are smaller items that don't fit in the other
category.
Yeah, they're all kind of smaller, and so we don't isolate them per se.
Thank you.
Yeah. Question?
I'll just note that we did go over this in our planning and development committee meeting this week, and lots of questions, kind of gave an extensive review. We did not have a quorum, so we did not really vote to recommend, but Jesse and I had a consensus. The consensus was that that we thought we would basically we had a consensus recommendation for that was positive for the budget. So.
I have a question because I was not clear. What were some of the questions? Some of the, you say there were a lot of good questions. What were some of
Well,
those?
just a rounding error, that was exciting.
It's $1.
And,
It's $1. It's not in here right now, so we can't see any difference.
It was corrected, it was corrected.
I can go to some of the things were asked, like, for example, the 2.8 million thing, I think I didn't quite understand that at first. So that was explained to be the Tidewater contract that we're now outsourcing. The 116,000 at the end, that was a potential, I mean, if this budget would actually go to pass, that would go towards the rainy day fund, right? So that.
Not the rainy day fund, the operating reserve, unless it was,
Okay.
we have to pass, I believe it has to be something passed for us to move anything into the rainy day fund. I just can't move things into the rainy day fund, so, yeah.
So like set aside to be able to
Yeah.
do something like that, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, gosh, I can't remember the question.
Well, I think some of
It's
the
like a half-hour
questions were
question.
just sort of these very specific sort of questions about, like somebody had a question about what's included in what, and, why some of those things were going up or down based on the movement to Tidewater, or maybe there were just variations because of the year, right? So we talked about a lot of those things, so.
And then the other item was that 27,000 decrease was what we were talking about, the relationship between decreased ridership that's in the CEO report that we've kind of getting it, we're down like 14% ridership, and how does that impact like the first couple of years and then over time, and with this budget kind of amendment and federal spend down of grants, and like we have to do stuff like that too, stuff like that.
Yeah, we spoke at length about how federal funding flows into the organization. And from that, it kind of pinned that as a potential presentation for the full board that might be very interesting to see, not only what are the buckets of federal funding and their uses, but then how do we program them and then get those cash flows. So that's something that we'll start working on to bring just as an education topic.
I have one more question. How many employees are we going to have less that would account for like 2.2 million
I think it was it 20, oh, how many access drivers was it?
21.
21, okay, 21 was in my mind, but I was like, wrong, 20. It's about 21 drivers that those positions are no longer in the budget. And I believe there was one customer service? Yes, so 22.
So would that be enough employees to sustain the bus driving, the driving?
We didn't decrease so when I say the access drivers weren't, I believe, were not used for fixed route. And so that doesn't affect the fixed route service that we are operating, the termination of those positions. And I will let Pam answer about the customer service. I think it is sufficient, but she can answer that question or Sierra.
The customer service position was no longer needed because we aren't scheduling the paratransit, which is what customer service does.
Oh, so that position pretty much was eliminated because.
But wasn't eliminated, they just don't have as much work to do because they're not doing that scheduling, so it was able to be handled by one fewer person than what we had. We had 4, now we have 3.
Okay, thank you.
And correct me if through this whole transition, one of the pieces of it that I think we can feel really proud of is making sure that we helped our employees with the transition. And so nobody that I'm aware of lost their employment. All of our drivers were those who wanted to be employed by Tidewater were offered positions. And then I think the customer service position was through vacancy. Yeah. So there was no one who was overtly sort of laid off or put out of employment. And we were intentional about that throughout the process. So a lot of kudos to Pam and Lee and others for doing it that way.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the budget amendment? Okay, we do need to take action on this, so happy to receive the motion.
First motion.
I was going to put you with the band. I'll second it.
Okay. So move to approve the budget amendment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I
No.
had.
And then, Raleigh, you're gonna second that? All right, great. Okay, so we have a motion by Jesse, a second by Raleigh to authorize the FY 2026 budget amendment. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is resolutions, and we have done. Moving on to the second page. Under old business, we have 2 items. The first is the 2025 Q1 paratransit report with Mr. Johnson and Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone again. So we're going to start off, thank you so much, recapping. So what happened in Q1 for us within paratransit? So as far as introduction, so again, I'm the general manager. I think I've met mostly everybody here. It's great to see everyone again. And then we also have James Johnson, who's our partner success manager, that joins us for a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings to be able to drive continuous improvement and incorporate different things within the service for us. And he's joining us virtually as well. So as far as Q1, we're going to talk a little bit about the performance. What tech enhancements have we enabled to really drive performance for the business? And then a Q2 snapshot with what those enhancements have been able to bring and manifest so far. So within the first quarter, really great to see over 16,000 rides have been completed, 7,800 revenue hours, and over 400 active riders. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on, of course, from an efficiency standpoint and on-time performance. So the utilization rate ended up at 1.7, and that's how many riders per hour are we servicing. So through the tech enhancements, we'll see that number continue to improve, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. As far as the on-time performance, that was a 91.1, and we saw the average trip time for any of our riders was hovering right around 24 minutes so far. What's your OTP goal? Right around 93% is a really healthy on-time performance, and then we've had some peaks closer to 95 and 97% on some days. So I think this is really cool. Sorry. So this is a really cool map. It's a heat map of all the requested rides throughout the entire community. So I think it does a really good job shaping from those requested rides how we can really connect everybody to everything that they have going on within our zones and really protecting the community. So great to see that 40% for the employment really relying on us to make sure that we get them there on time. Because it's so much more than just shopping or recreation. These are people's livelihoods that we're responsible for, and we really have that passion to be able to provide that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the last slide, what method, and I apologize if other people in the room know the answer to this, but what method are you using to, I guess, to obtain this information? Are you just asking the passengers in person, or is there some kind of a, like an online portal they're going to fill this out?
Yeah, of course. So all of this information is available at the time when they schedule and they book the rides. So they are able to provide a reason if they would like for that ride when they're doing the booking, either through the app or when they call to book the rides.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's great data to have when, going to people for funding and things like that. So, thanks.
Of course. All right, so continuing on to Q1, so we have a couple quotes directly from our riders. So when they do get solicited that survey, they have an opportunity to provide additional comments or additional feedback. So we have just two recent ones up there. Typically focused on what we see for a lot of the positive ones is focusing on the driver engagement and what that relationship and interaction really looks like. So that's why the one on the bottom really spoke to me about one of our drivers, Jamal. Was very patient. He went over and beyond his job, showing how much of a caring person he is and the interacting and compassion that he shows for the riders. So wonderful to see, and Jamal's one of our great drivers as well. But overall, after they take that survey, they're also able to say, okay, well, what did go well? How do they specify it? So some of the top markings that we end up seeing, great driver was the top one at 17.5%. Friendly staff, quick trip, and smooth routing is typically what we see. So those are the top 4 categories when they do rate us 5 stars from what we see on that breakdown.
Single selector.
No, multi-select. Yeah. So we had about 635 reviews, and I think there were over 2,000 entries for like what went great with the multi-select. As far as a snapshot for Q2, so I'm going to hand it over to James in a little bit to talk a little bit more about some of the tech enhancements and software-based stuff that we were able to really implement. But we've been able to see a pretty immediate and drastic improvement based on utilization and on-time performance. So it's really encouraging to see that since the start of April 1st all the way through last week, that utilization or the efficiency rating has increased, which really helps, as well as the on-time performance transitioning from 91.1 to a 93.4 right now, holding steady for Q2. So, and encouraging to see average trip time has also decreased. So our riders aren't spending as much time in transit, so we're getting them where they need to be a little bit quicker. So it's been nice. And then James, are you there?
Yes. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, everyone. Apologies I couldn't be there in person today, recovering from a bit of bronchitis, but I'm excited to be with you virtually. I want to talk a little about some of the enhancements we made across Q1 that help drive up some of these numbers that we're seeing in early Q2 analysis. I think it's really cool that we're actually tracking to come in above Q1 on just about every one of these metrics, from completed rides to OTP. And that was really done through some changes to the algorithm, as well as in some of the way that we've done some of the staffing. So I'll get into that in just a bit. The first one I want to highlight is a change to the algorithm. So that's going to come through better aligning our service hours and operation hours with facility hours. So that's going to prevent people from getting dropped off at destinations too early. If they have an appointment at a facility that opens at 8, we want them there at 8 or maybe 7:55, but not at 7:40. So better aligning those two things is really helps on-time performance and helps situations where individuals might get to a destination a bit too early. The second thing I want to highlight is that we've done some speed recalibrations. So essentially, we've gone through our algorithm and fine-tuned it so that it better accounts for construction and things like that that might be on the road, to better reflect on on-time performance and give people a more accurate arrival time to their destination and a more accurate pickup time. So that's a change that didn't impact anything in this in terms of riders, but was done more on the back end just to make sure that the system was giving us accurate times. We've also increased the amount of time that we allow for passengers that have that use a wheelchair to be able to board the vehicle. So by increasing that, it's allowed us to have a bit more of a buffer on that on-time pickup. So they're really exciting things there. One of the other things that we made sure that we've been proactive in addressing is making sure we have accurate demand for peak times. So previously, the last shift bid prioritized more straight shifts and less split shifts. So by prioritizing more split shifts, we've made sure that we have drivers during peak times of 8 and 3 p.m. So really exciting adjustments there. And as well as continuing the discussion we had previously on adding more independent contractor drivers to help for some of the riders who might be more ambulatory, who are able to take a different form of transit rather than the regular full-time bus. So pretty exciting things there. I'll pause there and just see if there's any questions, and Marcus can help highlight some of those things as well for folks in the room.
Are we gonna see another slide that shows just the change? I'm just interested in the change between Q1 and Q2, or if you show that at all.
Yep, so that'll be built in to the next time we do the quarter review. We call it like an executive business review, in which we'll do that comparison quarter over quarter, once we have that.
So first the bid.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, so we're saying, is active riders mean like unique riders total, or does it mean people who use it more than once, or what's the definition of that?
Yep, so it's a unique total, so as long as they book at least one ride within that time frame, they'll count and classify as an active rider. Yeah, most of that, I think the last time I ran the numbers, it was closer to maybe 275 to 300 that have over 5 bookings. So we do see a lot of repeat and schedule in advance. And John, do you have something too?
I was just going to say, so there are still riders who are certified to use Access. They just have not scheduled trips during the period of show. So total number of riders for people who are certified to use the service. Do we know how many are certified?
Not off the top, but I can tell you that.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Certified, what is that?
Yeah, so in order to qualify for Access, a customer fills out an application that is then certified by a medical provider that indicates that they have a disability related to their mobility. So that's their paratransit certification. At that point, they receive an ID card from us and are able to schedule trips.
What's the total cost of our contract on an annual basis?
We will find out this year. We have contracted on the cost end on a per ride expense.
Which is?
And I know it's $31 and some change. Yeah.
Maybe 39?
Yeah, we can get that information.
I think Jesse's question was, so are you saying there's 367 riders who have completed 9,000 rides? So there's 367 individuals, but 9,000 rides, meaning that those 300 people rode 9,000.
Sometimes 5 times a week with a pickup and drop off, or sometimes we'll see multiple pickup and drop off throughout the day. So I can do my grocery shopping, I can go to the mall, I can go to the movies, and then it'll still be those 4 trips within that day just for that one rider.
Do they charge per ride if they have multiple rides that day?
Yes.
If they're going to different locations?
Yes, they charge.
And it's $39 each?
Not for the individual. So I think 39 is for contract. For that individual, there's 2 pricing tiers. So for the Access, it's $3. For the Access Plus, it's $4.50. Then if they do token transit, they get a little bit of a discount as well. Awesome. And then I think this was a question last time for the total independent contractor headcount. So when we launched, we had 3 independent contractors. Right now, we have 3 that are active, so the headcount has remained the same. We have 1 that really only works on weekends, which for access is only on Saturdays. So he's maybe averaging 1 driving slot a month. And then the other one is currently suspended until they update their information, because if anything's expired, it's like insurance, driver's license, anything like that, we do not allow them on the road. So until they update that information, they're not going to be on the road.
So is it, you said 31 and change for per ride, or was it 39 ultimately?
It's 39.57.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for access?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Okay, next, under old business, is discussion of purchasing clean diesel versus hybrid buses.
So we realize it's a very full agenda tonight. Thank you for your persistence, and we'll press on here. We wanted to bring a conversation to the board tonight regarding hybrid buses, clean diesel buses, and federal funding. So to kind of bring everyone up to speed on where we've been, our journey to procuring hybrid buses most recently. Under the prior surface transportation bill known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the IIGA, the administration at the time was moving the industry toward electrification of fleets, and they required public transit agencies to develop a fleet transition plan to address low and zero emissions. Those plans had to be drafted and approved by boards and then attached to grant application requests. So we did that. We completed our low and zero emission fleet transition plan in 2023. It was approved by the board. You can find it on our website, but the summary is this. The recommendations were to continue making investments in conventional clean diesel buses and hybrid electric buses, and then to pilot alternatives like electric vehicles or hydrogen fuel cell buses, when possible on a small scale related to any funding. So since that plan was adopted, we applied for and were awarded a federal low-no grant in the amount of $11 million to buy 12 hybrid buses. And we've been following that grant with the current orders with Citilink. What we have found out in working with the FTA and USDOT is that across the nation, the new administration is not obligating funds under the low-no program any longer. We are lucky in that our grant has already been obligated. So that's good news. Those $11 million are available to us to continue to buy hybrid buses. What the administration is allowing transit properties to do is to revise those grants to buy conventional buses instead of hybrid buses. And so what we wanted to start to bring to the board is a conversation about hybrid versus diesel again. That study does cover a lot of the impact there, but we've got some data we can share too. Jason has some data available to share. Hybrid buses are popular from a community standpoint. However, the fuel savings and emissions reduction compared to clean diesel is relatively negligible. There is a difference, but it's comparatively negligible. A hybrid bus costs around 1.2 to 3 million, and we can get conventional clean diesels around 800,000 plus. So what we wanted to start today, no decision, this is just the beginning of a conversation, is facing financial constraints, should we consider stretching that grant to purchase as many as 15 or 16 buses instead of 12? It's a topic for discussion. Jason, do you have additional information that you wanted to share tonight? Do you want to come forward and share what you have?
So as everybody knows, we have already received 3 of the newest generation Gillig hybrids. We received them here in the last couple of months. None of them are in service yet. It takes time to get all the technology put in them and get them branded and all the things that it takes. It takes a few months. So none of those are in service yet, but they should be here within the next month or so to start to roll out in service. But like John said, we have the opportunity to potentially switch our future purchases from hybrid to conventional clean diesel. And I've got several statistics here that I'd like to go over, and I can answer any questions you guys might have related. But as John stated, in 2027, the cost for a hybrid bus is about $1.174 million per. So we've been purchasing in groups of 3 buses, so that's 3.5 million and some change for a group of 3 buses. In 2028, that amount jumps up to 1.23 million per bus and some change for a total of almost 7 million for a group of 3 buses. 2028 conventional diesel buses are estimated to cost about $898,000 and some change, putting a 3-bus group at about $2.695 million. So there's a pretty significant difference in purchasing a hybrid over a diesel bus. About 334,000 per bus difference. So if we were to purchase the remaining 9 buses that we were planning to purchase, the difference is a little over $3 million in savings for conventional diesel over hybrid. As John did state, there is a difference in fuel savings, however. So hybrids do get slightly better fuel economy than a conventional, and on average they get about 0.6 miles to the gallon better than a diesel bus. And it doesn't sound like much, and it really isn't. It isn't a huge change or a huge difference, but when you're only getting a little over 5 miles to the gallon, it is a difference. So a conventional diesel bus, our conventional diesel buses that we have in our fleet right now, get about 5.07 miles to the gallon. And this is a year-long average from 2025. The hybrids got about 5.67, so 0.6 difference. The buses, a conventional bus last year burned 7,890 gallons of fuel. A hybrid burned 7,055 gallons. So if you were to average our fuel cost for 2023, 2024, 2025, we paid about $2.86 per gallon. So a hybrid saved Citilink about $2,388 per year in fuel savings. At that rate, it would take about 140 years to break even on the fuel savings. If we were to pay $5 a gallon, it would take about 80 years. So the investment in hybrid technology from simply a money saving standpoint, it isn't there. It isn't worth it, in my opinion. So did you have a question? And then another point to bring up would be, hybrid buses. They probably or possibly do have a better impact on public perception. People see a hybrid and think, okay, that's clean. There is value in that for sure. We can market it. I don't know how much value, but that's not really what I do, but there's certainly some sort of value there. But the actual facts are that they really don't put out any less emissions than a standard diesel bus. They have all the same parts as a standard diesel bus, but a whole bunch more. So their output of emissions is essentially the same. You got that fuel economy, but the additional cost really just blows that savings away. So the last major component from my perspective, from a maintenance perspective, is the complication of a diesel versus a hybrid. The hybrids are so much more complicated. They require so much more training and specialty knowledge, and the cost of ownership is just so much higher on a hybrid than it is on a conventional diesel. So for all these reasons and more, from a maintenance standpoint, it's my opinion that the conventional diesel is a smarter choice for Citilink going forward.
Thank you, Jason. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. I know one of the questions I have is it would be helpful for us to see that sort of life cycle cost over the useful life, so we can make a comparison there. And then I'll also point out that when hybrid bus technology was first introduced to the industry, at about the same time, the clean diesel was also, those regulations on emissions and the makeup of diesel fuel itself were coming online at the same time. So diesel burns cleaner today than it did at the time. Back in those days, when if you followed a diesel engine, you saw the big puff of black smoke coming out of the tailpipe of the bus or truck, that diesel isn't what's going on here, because we have emissions filters on those exhaust pipes. We use diesel DEF to burn off those carbons within the engine itself. So those clean diesel buses really are much cleaner than the buses of old.
Yeah, modern diesel engines are effectively air purifiers. The air that comes into the engine is dirtier than the exhaust coming out because of all the filters and all the chemical changes that take place within its emission system.
It's also challenging because there's a narrative here, right, about hybrid buses do have that value that you mentioned, and there's something about a bus being operating on battery power, where it's quiet, and that's important. So there are benefits and advantages. We're not really asking anything of the board here tonight other than introducing this topic, and then seeing what information you would need if you want us to further explore purchasing diesels versus hybrids.
Was the $11 million that was awarded for the hybrid buses, or was it, so how would you purchase diesels if it were $11 million specifically for hybrids?
You're right, the scope of that grant award was for hybrid buses. What we're being told is that US DOT is allowing those grants to be amended so that transit properties can purchase diesel buses. So if we were to go down this path, we would need to amend that grant. And that's more of an administrative amendment. It's something that happens between us and the Region 5 office in Chicago. So it's a relatively simple process to amend a grant.
We expect, once that gets amended, is the remainder of that 11 million? It's not, they will come back with another ruling later with the new administration and say, no, you gotta go back this way.
Yeah, and you raise a good point that, what happens when the administration changes and policy initiatives swing back and forth. But what we would likely see happen with the 11 million is not only could we purchase diesel buses, we would also ask to buy more buses. So that funding would still be available, the full 11 million, or the remaining amount of it. to continue to buy
More,
a number
more
of
buses.
more buses.
I think, first off, thanks for going through all those line items. I think some of the things I would look at, it may be just like a simple matrix between the two, right? Like, and I'm thinking overall fuel costs, life cycle maintenance, I think about longevity related to the bus. How long does a diesel bus last versus a hybrid? Availability from a procurement standpoint, is it easier to get a diesel bus versus hybrid ones? Is there more manufacturers? I don't know. And then clearly the emissions factor too. I think those are the things I'm just kind of trying to think through. And when you work through those, just being able to see that on like a little thing that says, these are the evaluation criteria, here's this one, this one. I think that's make it easier to kind of line it all up.
Yeah, we can share information about that. Bus availability is, there are only 2 US manufacturers in the market now,
Yeah.
and they'll build whatever we want them to build. It's pretty.
So that doesn't even affect that.
No, it doesn't affect availability.
Is rollout time the same for both?
Jason, what are you hearing?
So essentially it is, and it's mostly because they are so far out, they have plenty of time to get the things they need. So if we were to order a bus today, it would take nearly 2 years to come in. That being said, I am told that if we only order 1, 2, 3 buses at a time, which is what Citilink does, they may be able to squeeze us in small gaps in their production schedule. If we were to order 50 buses, they wouldn't be able to do that, obviously. But if they've got a small gap here and there, they can squeeze us in so that so it's a yes and no kind of thing. It's sort of first come first served for those small gaps. But either or would take a couple of years if you were to order them right now, and not slide into a gap. If anybody has any questions, you can reach out.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, we are on to new business. We have 4 items under new business. The first, John alluded to this a little bit earlier, but it's the award to the design and construction contract for replacement of the underground storage tanks. I don't know if John, you're just gonna.
Yeah, I'll just share some information briefly that we are still working on the procurement and scope and cost. This is a design build project, so we have to follow a federal law called the Brooks Act, which means we make a qualifications-based selection of the firm we're going to work with, and then we negotiate price. And so we've gone down that path. The firm that we had selected based on qualifications provided project costs that are way higher than our project estimates. And so we're asking them now to provide detailed cost breakdowns for every line so we can really drill into conducting a price evaluation. We're also considering what federal grants we can use to apply additional funding to the project if needed. So this is going to take more time, and our recommendation tonight is just that we table this to next month, and I think we'll have answers for you by then.
So if everybody concurs, I think we need to make a motion to table this agenda item until the June. Second. Motion made by Jesse. Who made the second? I should have said who made it. Okay. All right, a motion by Jesse, a second by Raleigh, and any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Second item here is to award the contract for the Transit Tomorrow Long Range Transit Plan. This was the other item that was on the agenda, John.
Oh, yes, okay.
Saying this was the other item that was on our committee agenda that I spaced. Not the other thing.
Yes.
It's all coming back to me now.
Okay, I'll
try to keep this short, because if I stay any longer, someone's gonna have to feed me. So I provided a lot of info here, but essentially, Transit Tomorrow is an RFP requesting consultant services for a long-range transit plan with the scope of work, including several key things to be completed. The biggest being they would be responsible for helping Citilink with its vision and goals to guide the development of a long-range service plan. And at the end of their work with us, they'll offer a transit system redesign review in an effort to better serve our community, improve efficiencies, and make steps to increase ridership over a 10-year period. And the contractor will also offer recommendations for capital improvements over the next 10 years that could be developed. During the evaluation process, a team consisting of John, Latasha, Pam, Patrick, and myself evaluated 8 proposals that we received in total. And after coming through and scoring them, 2 specific proposals stuck out. So we invited the 2 firms, Nelson Nygaard, as well as Jarrett Walker and Associates, to meet with the evaluation team. And we also included Melissa Shaw and Jill Kreider in these meetings as well, because they'll be involved heavily with the outreach with them. And then Sharice was able to join us as well. The evaluation team was very impressed with both proposals. The 2 agencies were able to show a very clear understanding of the issues that Citilink and Fort Wayne are facing, and have an understanding of the urgency in which we need to make changes in the next few years to turn the tides for public transit in our community. The final decision truly came down to the timeline that they offered in each proposal. Our smaller budget size was a hindrance for every company that submitted a proposal. Nelson Nygaard's solution to this issue was to condense the timeline of the project to be completed in just 7 months. And Jarrett Walker had their timeline stretch out over a 15-month span. Why this was really important to us is because the proposals put heavy lifting back on us. It's particularly when it came time to conduct more public outreach after the different options and plans had been developed that we would need to present to the community again. So with the longer timeline with Jarrett Walker, it gives us more time to follow through with that, to properly educate and have good outreach with the community, so that everyone involved, including ourselves, truly understands what we're offering to the community. So with that in mind, the evaluation team recommends awarding the contract to Jarrett Walker and Associates. We feel the project can serve as the cornerstone for the foundation of Citilink's future and offers a glimmer of hope. The proposal came in at $199,648.80, which is just under our proposed budget of $200,000. Should this contract be awarded, Jarrett Walker and Associates and our staff would like to get the project started in June of 2026, which would put the end date where they would come meet with you all with the final proposals and approved plans from the community in August of 2027.
Thank you, Matt. And if I can add, first of all, great job on putting the RFP together and coordinating the whole procurement. This is, as you said, a very exciting project. It was contemplated in our capital budget. It's listed in the capital budget that was adopted by the board. There's a $200,000 allocation in the capital budget, and it's paid for, funded with 80% federal funding.
Did they give us any track record on savings that they, or revenue increases that they've been able to generate it? They have with cities and towns.
Yeah, they shared several case studies in their proposal, and in their presentation discussed examples of redesigning entire transit networks and then producing a lot of post-COVID benefits. So for example, and that's one of the issues here in Fort Wayne is that with a pre-COVID network design, but a post-COVID world. And so examples were Alexandria, Virginia, Houston, Texas, and several other examples where they did total network designs and delivered improved efficiency and ridership. So they've got that kind of experience available.
How long is that contract? Would the contract be with this company?
We would kick the project off in next month,
Right.
and then have the project delivery was by August.
August of 27, and then it would be up to us to implement the plan that they create.
Gotcha.
So once we get to August of next year, they kind of pull back, and then it's on us.
I got it. So
Yeah.
we'll work on the plan that they provided for us at that time.
Yeah.
So it's not an ongoing 200?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I could pipe in for a second, I think this is really exciting because I know when we've had, discussions with politicians at all levels, one of the questions that consistently comes up is what's the efficiency of the organization? And so now you're going to have something tangible to take back to them and show, once the changes are implemented. So I think it's just going to be really positive. I'm excited about it for you.
Thank you, Rachel. And I'll just say, this is a chance to be sort of a transit nerd and be excited, but Jarrett Walker Associates is really one of the top firms in this space. And they literally wrote the book. There's a book called Human Transit. People ordered copies already for all of you. And so it'll be a chance for us. Okay, yeah, we've got some orders. So that book is coming. We're going to be forming a book club. But anyway, it's a really interesting, they have an interesting perspective of looking at transit design and helping communities understand and engage in a transit redesign project. So thrilled to have them on board.
So I sat in on the interviews, and I think I just completely concur with what Max said about the timeline. As a planner, trying to eke out a 10-year transit development plan in 7 months is a lot. And it's a lot, especially for a team that already does a lot. So even though you have a consultant doing it, it's a lift for staff. You have to help coordinate meetings, you have to do logistics, you have to manage the contract, you have to review the products. To have a consultant do it's still a lot of work. And to try to jam all that into a 7-month time frame, I think was gonna be just a stress on staff. And it also was gonna, I think, in my opinion, mean a lesser product in a way, because when you are pitching out so much information for staff to review, there's just not a lot of time in there. So they're gonna give out a draft and you're gonna be like, okay, we need this back in 2 weeks. And everybody's gonna be, really stressed out about trying to read it plus do everything else. So I completely concur that I think 7 months was not at all enough time. And then only 1 point of public input that really, really bothered me. There was like 1 stage of public input. And as a planner, it's like, I would never dream of just 1 stage of public input for anything. So all this to say that I think the Jarrett Walker team is the right choice.
Are they local?
From Alexandria, is it the Alexandria office? Jarrett Walker, he's from Australia originally, but they have offices in several cities in the United States, maybe San Francisco and Alexandria, and I feel like there was one East Coasty one.
We did have one local firm provide a proposal.
Kind of local, Lockmuir.
Yeah. Yeah. They were not selected to advance to the interview stage.
It was a very hard selection. They all really scored pretty high comparably, so we had to really kind of critique harshly to get to the 2, and yeah. Was very surprised by 8 submissions. Very surprised. A lot of it.
How does the bidding process go for organizations that wanted to bid on that?
We just release it out. through the, procurement websites and through our own website. We put a ad in mass transit, I believe. We didn't do APTA because that was too expensive. But the companies just keep their eye on that at all times, and so that's how
How they bid on those.
got involved, yeah. So yes, there's a scope of work that they have to read through and make sure that they can fulfill that scope of work before submitting, and if they can't, then that essentially weeds out who would or wouldn't.
Who advances to the interview stage.
So I think what they're seeking today is a motion and approval from us to award the contract. And there is an amount listed that the contract, that was that. Do you need that amount listed, or do you want just under the 200,000 mark, or how do you want that?
I think you could list the dollar amount, which is what their cost proposal was. So
It's
that
a not to exceed
Yeah.
for the 199. 80
Yeah, 80 cents. yeah.
cents matter.
Don't go over it.
Did they know what your budget was? Because they came in right under the.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that was, so part of the RFP process is you have to allow the companies to submit questions before making the final proposal. That was a question by a couple of them. We went ahead and answered this time because of previous experiences where all of the submissions for the RFPs came in over the budget that we had, so then it created more work for us on the back end.
Go back and start all over.
Yeah, so this time we were just up front and said, here's our budget, and that helped them create their plan within our budget. Yeah. So that's how Nelson Nygaard decided to only do a 7-month timeline, and right off the bat we asked them why their proposal didn't kind of point out our low budget, and they said that's why we only have a 7-month timeline. If it's going to take longer than that, it will take a lot more money, and so they were very upfront about that. So there wasn't a lot of wiggle room in their proposal for us.
Okay.
I'll second.
The motion by Nelson, a second by Nina to approve a contract to Jarrett Walker Associates for $199,648.80. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're switching, look, pay attention to the notes. So next item up is to authorize public uses of city facilities policy and procedure, and looks like Ashley's.
So to give you guys a little bit of background, we had a request from a private individual to use Citilink's central station and set up a booth to have interaction with our customers. And that got elevated up through management and ended up with Rachel and I, where Rachel and I said, listen, historically, we haven't done things like this. I guess in the last couple of years, we've allowed a couple people to do it. There is some legal risk and concern with that because as a government entity, once you open your forum, the First Amendment applies. We actually had some experience with that about 8 years ago with our advertising policy. I suspect Nelson and Sharice remember that. It was an expensive experience. And we ended up rewriting our advertising policy as a result. We've actually rewritten it twice actually since then to try to keep ourselves safe, because by opening our advertising space, we're opening the forum. So based on discussions with John and management, Rachel and I recommended that we really keep the forum closed as much as we can. And what I mean by that is once you start letting 1 or 2 people come in and talk, you have to let everybody basically. I mean, yeah, you can be selective There's certain criteria, but they're pretty restrictive if you don't want to be sued. So we went through that process, but what we also don't want to do is restrict Citilink's ability to use its own property for business. Obviously, we're going to have auditors and inspectors and people coming in. And so this policy really is meant to apply to third parties who want to come in and solicit or do demonstrations or other activities at our facilities, and we've decided we're not going to allow that for the legal reason, but B, it's going to interfere with our business and our ability for our customers to board buses, safety concerns, things like that. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the policy itself or, the background behind why we're doing that, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions, but it's really meant to be protective of Citilink and its local litigation and issues with customers. Right.
Will that impact things like when the community gives the pig count and they have tables and things like that set up down at?
So I think the only opening that we left is if Citilink is closed. So if the station is not in operation, like on Sunday, for example, that there could be exceptions to allow people to come in because it wouldn't interfere with Citilink's business at that point because we're not operating.
I think what you're talking about is, I don't know what the pit count is. So it's a point in time count for homeless population, and so it would be more like a survey and not
A vendor.
not a vendor, not anybody selling anything, but it would really be a count that's done by volunteers and organizations to assess the number of homeless in the community. And that relates directly to funding, so grant funding and other funding. You have to do these point in time counts. And so that's what you're referring to.
It is, thank you.
How long have you guys been doing it in the past?
We have.
Do you know how long?
I don't know.
At least the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And we also have employees that volunteer to kind of do that. I was one this year myself.
So the conversation that we had is if it's being done by a Citilink employee, this policy is not prohibiting Citilink employees. And
So then, but what if we had because it was like myself and somebody from the city of Fort Wayne, and then I know Raleigh there was somebody else. So would that other person not be allowed to do it and we be the employee?
I think it depends on what, A, the employee would be allowed.
Right.
But B, I think it depends on what they're doing. Are they setting up a booth? Are they interacting with people? Are they soliciting?
Yeah.
Yes.
So typically, I think that would not be allowed except for the Citilink employee based on the policy as written.
Try again.
So, what if it's like a government, like a city or government sanctioned activity? Because that's what the point in time count is. It's a government activity.
Yeah, there's no solicitation. No. It is collecting information, giving out snacks, connecting people to resources.
So typically, government functions on government property don't fall under the forum issue. But I don't know, as the policy as written, if there's an exception for that.
So should we maybe table it to see if we should add something in? Because I would really hate to, seeing.
It's a community benefit.
Yeah, and, well, not just that, but I can't imagine doing the right time count and not looking at public transit. I guess that's the other part.
Yeah, I don't know if they,
I think if we word it that way as an exception for government function on government property, I think that could be an exception that we could have relatively easily.
So-
Something like that.
I guess the question is if we could amend it by adding what you just said, which would say thoughtfully.
For government entities.
And then you maybe pass it and then you can make that change. Does that make sense?
Health that wording that says maybe if it's approved by the board or the CEO.
I don't know that we have to, if it's.
The problem is when you start approving things by anybody,
You have to prove.
you have made a choice.
To choose.
And you are discriminating against someone else by making that choice. You have to then set out criteria as to why you are approving or denying people, and then your criteria get picked apart. That's 100% what happened with
The advertising.
the advertising issue. Essentially, I think one of the biggest issues was we had looked at the person's website, which was on the advertisement, and your policy doesn't specifically say that you can look at the link, within the advertisement to determine if it violates your policy or not. So, they get very nitpicky very fast, and there are a lot of organizations that will come in, national organizations that will come in and pick
Looking for
transit
things.
company, and so they come in with deep pockets to back up the person's change. That happened in 2007. So, like I said, we're just trying to be careful that it can't be seen as discriminatory in any way, or, I mean, you can't pick one side. If you're gonna open it, you have to, it has to be content neutral.
Because there's always someone that's gonna be looking for something to challenge you on.
So when we say, oh, well, when we're closed, we will consider it, because then it's not interfering with business. Well, that's viewpoint neutral. It doesn't matter who you are, when we're closed, we will consider it. It doesn't matter.
But then do you have criteria to consider it under?
There is nothing in the policy currently for that.
Yeah. Well, were you thinking
Because we
of like
talked
open
about-
streets and stuff like that?
There is a provision in the policy that when
For
the facility
fitness
is
was-
closed,
yeah.
if the community needs to use it for fitness or other events like on a Sunday, then I can authorize that would be allowable for fitness.
And do you
or-
mean like opening up the restroom? Is that what you mean? That kind of thing?
Yeah, we do that, and it's like large scale community events would allow
Or
that.
serving, or passing out water and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's only if it's closed. So you were able to put that, include that. I mean, I think Sharice offered an amendment. Could we just include something specific to doing that count?
Yeah, we could specifically identify the pin count as an example.
I do like the city, I do like government, you had some word for it. So maybe it's not the pit count, but maybe it's another like government thing that we need to do to survey public transportation riders for some other city sanctioned or city related thing. If you put in an exemption that simply talks about point in time count, then that'd be the only thing. So it might be, because who knows, maybe they call it something else, in a few years you might, I would hate that have boxes in. Because I'm thinking about if we were doing a plan or we were doing something else and they wanted to survey riders for some government reason.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Policing, I think, would be excluded, obviously. I mean, there's laws that supersede externally, but there are programs that local policing are involved in, like the HART program, where they will come on board and provide social services to folks at Central Station under that policing umbrella. That's the kind of thing that this government station language will help clarify.
So something like a ministry or something that would want to put a table or something, not be able to do that.
Yes, because unfortunately, if you allow in something like that, then you have to allow someone who's an atheist, you have to allow every single religion, you have to allow, somebody who wants to potentially, burn a flag or a cross, or, I mean, something else on our property. And that's the problem, is once you allow in speech, it has to be a content.
Yeah, I mean, we could end up with, abortion debates, essentially. I mean, I kind of envision that as like the worst case scenario. But, if we have a pro-life group that wants to come and provide information, then we have to allow for the pro-choice group to come in. And then it can just create so much conflict and tension, something certainly that we don't want any part of. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, at Central Station especially, I mean, there's a certain amount of safe public space for people to maneuver, but then there's buses coming in and out. I mean, that's a safety thing too. So I don't know that unless it's closed, like you say, we don't want to encourage a lot of the general public converging on that space from a safety perspective.
If I could, I do want to draw attention to one thing, not to drag this much longer, but there is a prohibition against the delivery or shipment, receiving of personal products or services for Citilink employees. We've not talked about that much, but this has an impact on workforce. Drivers who would call DoorDash to deliver food to the property is the kind of thing that has been a disruption at times. So this is an impact that we can consider, and this would be both at the office and at Central Station. But the objective is to keep any kind of commercial activities like that off of the property.
But you would allow UPS.
Yeah, UPS,
UPS can deliver something with Amazon.
Yeah,
I mean, this is slippery slope.
yeah, no.
In that event, if a Citilink employee, so to speak, spends money to bring something, well,
They're a public, it's public, and that's a drop off. Does that really qualify for that?
So there was one case where this exact issue erupted. I can share details about it maybe more privately, but there was an example where food delivery on site became a pretty significant disruption to our business.
And I might elaborate just a little bit. John, it was a food truck and, right, and then the person was coming on to the facility for the employees, without going into a whole lot of detail. And it just started, it was a question of whether he was soliciting sales in the building or the employees were going over to get it. And there really wasn't a need for him to come to the facility. They could walk right across the street. But, if you allow one, then you have to allow all. And it was just very disruptive as well.
And I'll add, if we wanted to do a vending type of relationship, we could do that with intention. That would be another topic entirely. Transit agencies do provide commercial spaces on transit properties, but that's a different topic.
So then we just do lump them all together though, like the food truck and the DoorDash?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately. What do you think, Rachel, Ashley?
What was the question? I couldn't hear Raleigh very well.
Is it necessary to lump them all to, to put that all together, to put a food truck and a DoorDash delivery for somebody?
Well, I think, yes, I think we do need to do that because, well, one, we're already through this policy saying we're not allowing food trucks on the property necessarily. Yeah. I think the bigger, the more key point is we're not having vendors in and out with regularity. If we want to allow it, I think to John's point, we can create a separate policy and maybe create some structure around it so that if you are an employee that wants to have food DoorDashed, we have a certain entrance that has to be used maybe so it's not, they're not in the way of the buses and things like that. Because if we have these cars coming in, it can also impact the, the ebb and flow of our daily operations. So I think we can accomplish the goal of allowing it through a separate policy. And then maybe, I don't know, Ashley, do you think we would need a carve out in here that says, with the exception of our, policy, DoorDash policy or something like that, food vendor policy?
We might have to.
But even
in that policy, like I said, the problem is once you start letting in a vendor, once you start letting in third parties, you're making single carve outs and then you have to be able to explain why that carve out is allowed and why this other carve out isn't allowed and people nitpick.
But I mean, really, if someone is paying for the food on their phone, I mean, and the person is not truly selling anything, they're just delivering, that's a lot different than any kind of solicitation, right? So I'm not sure it's apples to apples either. I don't know, do you disagree with me?
Right? Could it be like I don't know, like someone's there for an hour or whatever, setting shop and something versus sort of just stopping and without intention being there, some time period.
But then you get someone who says, well, I came on the property and I only handed out 5 flyers, I was in there for 5 minutes and I left. You see what I'm saying? Like, as soon as you put a time frame on it, okay, well, then how long do they have to be gone before they come back? You know what I mean? So this person parks across the street, they bring their 5 flyers, harass people, go back to their car. It's terrible, but it's
Can you
really
talk
the world
about
we live
like
in.
pre-purchased delivery of food? I mean, can you be really specific?
Well, was the guy who parked the bus, was it free? You know what I mean? Did they pay it, then he was carrying it on the property over and over? So,
I have a question.
yep.
Where, could they, like the parking spot that's on the left, like go facing the car wash, where it's just like meters? Could they specify one location where only like DoorDash can deliver or park and not where the buses enter?
So I mean, we can do anything with our policy. I mean, that's what Rachel was saying, you know, we could say a specific door in a specific location, but it still comes back to, depending on how the wording is and what we're saying, these people are allowed to do, it can be misconstrued and used for other people to utilize our property to potentially interfere with what we're doing, solicit our renters or different things.
So do you think there's a way to write this that can be covered? That's just a foundational question.
There may be, but I think it would take more time than what we're going to be determined today. I think that Raleigh's question, when we start talking about, well, if it's a government function, you're using government property for a government function, I think that's an easy enough amendment that I think we need to get there. If we're going to talk about carving out for like DoorDashers to be allowed to bring it, I think we need to, A, be talking more with Citilink management about what door we want them to use, where we want them to park. What happens if your DoorDasher comes and there's someone in that one spot that they're allowed to park in? So I think that would be a wider discussion, if I'm honest. I don't know if that's an amendment we can make.
Can you differentiate between central station and like the main offices?
Because this policy does not, this includes all.
Because I feel like that kind of thing at central station is way more disruptive than it would be if it was the break room at central state, not for this, at the main office. So that to me is sort of a different scenario because it's not like the public is all day getting on and off buses.
Right, or if it's interfering with the day-to-day operation of the buses going.
And it's better equipped to handle individual car traffic versus the central station that is meant for buses and not a lot of cars.
And even still, I would like to take time to do this. I would hate to listen to like a blanket policy that could potentially impact employees. Like, I wouldn't want to do that. Let's see if we can figure this out to make it sense and make it safe. I don't want to do this right now.
If I may, I think you're adding, I think we're creating issues with driver and management by including delivery services like this. In our current system, we don't have a break time for drivers. So they rely heavily on either relief drivers bringing them food so they can, smash it real quick during the 10 minutes they have off, where they rely on the delivery to happen. And then also, who's going to enforce this issue is a big question for me as well. And then we're also not considering, this is a Greyhound, for passengers that are laying over there for several hours at a time sometimes, and they're relying on food delivery service because Powers is really the only thing close food-wise. And so it's not just drivers that are getting delivery food to a station.
Thank you for making that point.
Yeah.
And I was asking, we could take we could take the delivery item out. That may be the simplest option because frankly, the people who are delivering typically are not soliciting or attempting to exercise their First Amendment rights. It was a concern that was put in based on conversations with management. I mean, I have no personal.
This may be a separate policy.
Well, and I get the food truck thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I get that. I don't know if there's a way to say that without, or maybe it's a situation where food trucks like that, if they have to get maybe permission somehow for a food truck specifically.
Classified.
Food trucks should be banned unless it's
I would think they would.
particular government. I think that food truck should be probably banned unless it's special events that has to do with Citilink or governmental affairs. Because otherwise, like you said, everybody will want to park their bus there and capitalize on the income that they'll make. So if we eliminate it altogether and just leave it for DoorDash or food delivery, because the people that work in the office, they may be the only one on the shift, and they have to have lunch or eat or, so. Anyway.
How about this? Let's just pull this policy off the table tonight and come back with new language on government sanctioned activities. And then we can consider how we handle this, whether it's in this policy or in a separate policy.
Yes, and it might be helpful to, Matt, if you'd be willing to participate, in the process to give us, strategize on how you think this would be most effective and, beneficial to the employees, but keeping everything safe and, not creating havoc.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this policy went to on the website.
It did.
It was performed.
Yeah, it didn't come to planning and development, so is there an urge from those members to have it come back before the committee, or are you okay with this just going back to the board?
I can go back to the board.
Okay.
That was the recommendation.
Okay,
On
so,
this, too.
so we're gonna
For this
table it.
discussion.
Yeah, we need to specify a time period, I think, for tabling the item, so how much time do we think we want to table it for? 30 days, or next meeting, or the?
I mean, I think 30 days is enough as long as you don't have to take it back to the committee.
Right.
Sure, we can bring it back next month.
Next month?
Unless Matt's busy, if we're forcing Matt to participate.
Well, Matt is busy.
Okay, so we will need a motion to table this item until the June meeting.
Motion to table this item until June meeting.
Second. Jesse. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Same sign. Okay, thank you. Woo. Okay.
You did great.
You know what? I am not winning any short meeting awards today. Not happening. All right, the last item under new business is the award for the contract for general legal counsel services. General counsel legal services, sorry, reverse that. And so John is gonna take that on.
Yeah. So we did a competitive procurement for legal counsel services. Our contract with Rothberg and Creek evolved ends next month. Reviewed proposals and interviewed potential law firms. The final recommendation is for us to renew a 5-year agreement with Creek Default based upon their proposal. Lots of appreciated value for Creek. I don't know what happened to the screen. The screen went black. I don't know if Rachel is still online.
I think that we cut her off.
Yeah, I'm here.
Rachel's
I
still
about
in the
passed
room.
out.
Can she hear us?
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? Okay. Let me leave and come back.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Probably exceeded our time limit.
So they automatically
So anyway, just want to, thank Ashley and Rachel for your work.
They do a great job.
Okay,
For hanging in there with us as we really did, give this a look at the competitive market. And, I'm glad to see that there are so many options, but we're very happy with council and we'll look forward to continuing to work with you both.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
so this requires a motion and a vote. Nelson, second. The second award. And so we have a motion by Nelson, a second by Raleigh, to award the contract for general counsel legal services to Creed DeVoe. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes.
Yay.
Congratulations. Too bad. All right, so communications from the public, we have none. Board of Directors, open discussion. None.